with Pellegrini, with our DP situation, we're still waiting for some decisions at the league level. We have 4 DPs at the moment, so that's a work in progress, and roster compliance is next week. So we need to work on things, and we're continuing to work on things to get compliant.
There's some good news for Inter Miami, including a potential jersey sponsorship deal at long last, but also some bad news for Inter Miami. Hello everybody and welcome to the latest episode of Miami Total Football Radio, or as Steve and I like to call it in Spanish, Miami Total Football Radio. I am your co-host, Franco Panizo, on this week's podcast, and joining me is El Primo, Steve Brenner, who's going to try to say Miami Total Football Radio in Spanish this week, I think.
Me hablo un poco español. Miami Football y tengo más amor por la Miami Total Football Radio. No?
I think
good. See,
I think you just went French. Italian on us a little bit there. I was very confused there. What was going on?
I did a couple of years of Spanish at school, but just kept it. But maybe I should brush up a bit.
We will work on that Miami Total Football Radio on your part. Although I told my family they do listen to the show. And, we talked about it over the weekend on Easter. They were very upset about the fact that you got rid of the LLC nickname. They were pretty devastated by that. They thought that moniker should have stayed. Not kidding you. We talked about it for at least 30, 45 minutes, and it kept coming back up in conversation throughout the holiday. So, they like that nickname. I don't know about everybody else, but they like that nickname.
Look, I appreciate that, but I make the calls, and that's it. So, but I appreciate the love for it. I like that. I love that story. That's amazing.
Yeah. So speaking of making calls, it seems like Inter Miami has made a business decision, and that they will have a jersey and stadium naming rights deal announced later this week. We will get into that. We will get into a lot of the other preseason news. We spoke to Chris Henderson earlier this week, and he left a lot of nuggets for us to chew on and dissect, including, their issue that they're facing right now with 4 designated players on the roster. But, Steve, before we get into all of that news, just a quick reminder to everyone to please give us a follow on all our social media accounts at Miami Total Football on YouTube and Facebook, and at MIA Total Football on Twitter and Instagram. I know I say this often, but every follow we do get from you guys helps us to bring you more of this type of content on a regular basis, and it helps us to grow, and we do have a lot of plans for the future, so it helps us out tremendously. But anyway, Steve, let's get to it. All right, Primo, we were supposed to record yesterday, Tuesday. However, we caught wind that some news might be coming, so we held off, and we apologize to the listeners for that, but we held off for an extra day. So we're recording now Wednesday. The show will be dropping by the time you guys are hearing this on Thursday. And the news that came out today was that Inter Miami had a special announcement to make this Friday morning, and they will do so with Auto Nation. Now, they didn't say exactly what it was, but judging from the tone of the press release, and anyone who's been around MLS for a long time knows that those type of special announcements usually pertain to stadium or jersey sponsorship. Sources told me earlier today, and now pictures have made it out onto social media. The stadium will be called Auto Nation's Drive Pink Stadium. So Auto Nation will be the stadium sponsor. And I've also been told as of a few minutes ago that they will also be the jersey sponsor. Now, I don't know. I was not told whether it will be just Auto Nation across the front of Inter Miami's jersey, or if it'll be Auto Nation Drive Pink. But Auto Nation has both deals, and they've come to terms with Inter Miami. Don't know the financial details, but Steve, just what do you make of that news of Inter Miami finally, at long last, landing a deal?
Well, it's good news for the club. If you think about they've been going for at least one season now, and the club has been in existence for nearly 2 years. For it to then not really have that sort of financial backing, I guess must have been hard. We haven't really looked too deep into this story as it's gone along, but definitely, would have with everything that happened last year, with the lack of revenue, no fans coming in, people not out in the stadium buying shirts, all that kind of stuff, it was sort of imperative that they sort of got it sorted. So we don't know the figures, but just looking at some of the other MLS clubs, the LAFC, their Bank of California stadium, the naming rights is worth about $6 million a year. And then, you've got their sponsor. They have Target on their sleeve. They get $1 million from Target. So you're not looking at multi-million-dollar deals. Well, not hundreds of millions of dollars, but, just a good, solid sort of, backing from a local company that will just, help the club sort of move forward in all different ways, So, I guess it would have. I'm sure Jorge Mas has been working very hard and is delighted to get it over the line, because it was obviously a problem for them. They've been going for a while now and hadn't had anything sorted. Now they've got financials from elsewhere and whatever, but it's good. I guess good to get a deal signed off.
I agree that this is great for the team revenue, their bottom line. This is income that they missed out on last year, revenue that they missed out on last year. Now they'll have that, and they found a good partner. A partner that's located in South Florida. Headquarters are in Fort Lauderdale. And just to elaborate on what Drive Pink is, it's an initiative that AutoNation has that's raised over $26 million for cancer research and treatment. So it's a good philanthropic venture for Inter Miami to be involved in. Because if you remember a year ago, maybe a little bit more than a year ago, it had been reported by The Sun that David Beckham had struck a deal with Qatar Airways. Even pictures of the jersey with Qatar Airways emblazoned across the front of the chest came out. And that was supposed to be a deal worth $247 million for both the jersey and the stadium deal, stadium naming rights deal. So that was the deal that they struck a year ago, reportedly. But there was a lot of criticism from fans, from the general public, about aligning with Qatar Airways. This will be the complete opposite, though. This is a local business, an American business that was founded by former South Florida businessman Wayne Huizenga, rest in peace. He's owned, among other things, AutoNation, which he found, the Miami Dolphins, the Florida Panthers. He had quite a bit of success. So AutoNation checks off a lot of boxes for Inter Miami.
Yeah, absolutely. It's they're worth $3 billion, but it's also worth making the point that the money from Qatar or Dubai or Abu Dhabi, that they're on a different financial level compared to sort of retailers like AutoNation. Those Gulf states, they've got an endless pot. Just look how much Man City have spent over the last sort of 10 years. But they've clearly got some skin in the game, which is good. So it'd be interesting to see just how that affects their finances moving forward.
Yeah, it seems just like a complete 180 from what they were thinking about doing last year, where maybe they were prioritizing more money, but not necessarily the best PR in terms of their image. And now they've maybe gone the other way, where this is definitely a partnership that is local, that has a good cause behind it, and that should give them some money, although probably nowhere near as much as what The Sun reported that Qatar Airways was going to pay Inter Miami. By the way, for anyone that wants to see a picture of what the stadium looks like, if you're impatient and can't wait till Friday's announcement, there's already images on my Twitter handle on @Miami or @MIA Total Football on Instagram, and they're all over the web now. So you can, if you haven't seen them already, just go there and you can check them out. But Steve, let's focus now our attention to the team that's finishing up preseason. There's only a few days left in the preseason preparations. 3 games. One is happening as we record this right now here on Wednesday evening, which I'm sure you and I will be.
Or is there a game? Is there? Who knows? Is there?
There's a game. There's a game. And we and you are going to work our tails off over the next few hours and days to try to find out some details about it. Hopefully we can bring you fans and you listeners some info on whether the score, the goal scorers, the lineup. Hopefully we can get you some information on that. We're gonna try.
The fans we're just interested. We want to know how they're going on. I mean, we know that it's pre-season. It doesn't really mean too much, but it's just it's just interesting to know what's going on. That's what we're talking about, isn't it? So anyway,
let's focus on when we spoke to Chris Henderson on Tuesday, and we talked about a number of topics, as you can imagine, because we haven't spoken to Inter Miami officials in quite a few weeks. But he had a lot of interesting things to say. including the official revelation that Inter Miami is currently not roster compliant. It is not under the guidelines that it needs to be under MLS rules in terms of the squad that it has. And that's because they have on the squad right now 4 designated players. And you're only allowed to have 3 in MLS. Now, if you're asking who those 4 are, it's Gonzalo Higuain, Rodolfo Pizarro, Blaise Matuidi, who last year signed as a targeted allocation money player, but he came at the halfway point of the season, so now with his salary, he goes up for the full cap hit and is a DP. And the 4th DP is Matias Pellegrini, who is under the category of young DP. Regardless, he is a DP all the same. Now, Inter Miami has to shed the tag on one of them. However they do it, they have to do that before the games get rolling next week. That's a pickle for them. And Chris Henderson said he's waiting for a response from the league, something he had said weeks ago, and me and you talked about it here on the show about what he might have meant by that. And, we practically assumed that that's what he meant, that they had 4 DPs on the squad and that they were trying to see if Pellegrini could go into the under-22 initiative that has been started by MLS for this season. However, according to reports, that will not be possible. So Inter Miami's in a tough spot, and it seems like all eyes are on Matias Pellegrini in this situation. They're either going to have to find a way to restructure his deal, and he's going to have to agree to a pay cut, or they're going to have to loan him out, trade him, sell him. It's either that or get rid of one of the other 3, and I don't see that happening with the other 3 veterans. I think Pellegrini's the guy that they're going to have to move or bring down his deal. What do you think's going to happen? How do you see this playing out for Inter Miami?
Well, I think it's sort of symptomatic of everything that's sort of gone on beforehand. I mean, what a mess that's been made. How they got to this sort of point where, this is the Matuidi stuff is obviously linked in with, the ongoing investigation that I think the club are worried that they're going to drop an announcement on that close to the game. It's going to disrupt things, and they're a little bit upset, I think, that it hasn't already been sorted out. But I mean, it's just what was how the way the squad was planned last year. How's it got to this point now where they're in a sort of tears, or they don't know how to deal with the fact they've got four sort of DPs, because Tweedy's deal has clearly contravened any sort of financial guidelines, hasn't it?
So there has been a precedent of this before in MLS, and it happened with the LA Galaxy 2 years ago now, where they had 4 DPs on the roster prior to the start of the season. And what they ended up having to do was buy out Mexican star Giovanni Dos Santos' contract. And he then became a free agent, and they had to pay him for that. And he wasn't on the squad that season. And he never returned back to LA. Do you think Inter Miami is likely to part ways with Pellegrini? Or do you think that they'll prefer to loan him out or find a way to send him somewhere else? Let's assume that he doesn't agree to a new deal that brings down his cap hit.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be the fall guy, isn't he? So it just depends. Yeah, like you say, what they're going to do with him. Do they loan him out? Do they get rid of him? I mean, I don't know. These are decisions they're going to have to take, isn't it? But why, when they signed Matuidi, they clearly must have envisaged that something like this was going to happen in the close season, or when I don't know about the regulations. When you sign mid-season, does the stuff not come into effect at the end of the season? I'm not sure, but they foresaw this. And I think, there's just a kind of disbelief at what sort of Paul McDonough and that regime or whoever else was there, sort of how this sort of happened, really. So it's all a bit weird.
I think, and this is just pure speculation and conjecture on my part, so I'll repeat that, just speculation. I think that they thought, well, Matuidi will become a DP next year on a full cap hit, but we can put Pellegrini into that under-22 initiative. Now, whether that was an oversight on the previous regime's part or not, I mean, again, it's just speculation. It could be open for discussion. But this mess is not one that Chris Henderson made. This is something he's inherited.
Into it.
And now he's got it right, but now he has to figure it out. Now this is essentially one of his first really big challenges as Inter Miami sporting director. How do you manage and navigate this firestorm, so to speak?
Of course, yeah, he's come in. He's looked at the books of what's gone on before, and they're scratching their heads, thinking, "Hold on, why did this happen? How did this happen? You know, I mean, it's not like catastrophic, but I mean, there's clearly stuff gone on, like this instance where it's just been a bit of mismanagement, really. And now they're kind of suffering. You know, like I said, the worry is that the league still hasn't made the decision. I spoke to someone in the league at the start of the week, and they said we're still looking at it. We're going to check them out. Never really came back to me after that. And then, you know, the fear is that it's so close to the match. What if Mccarthy isn't allowed to play, or there is something that goes on? They are fined or whatever. You know, it disrupts all their plans. So they need a resolution sooner rather than later, and then then they have to try and rectify the mistakes that have gone before them.
Steve, you used the word resolution, and there's something else that needs a resolution as far as Inter Miami is concerned, and that's Major League Soccer's investigation into the Blaise Matuidi signing. Now, Chris Henderson said there is no update. Let's listen to what he said in addition to that during this week's press conference.
So the timing on Matuidi is, it's with the league at the moment. So, you know, we're waiting on that. As Phil told you, we were waiting before. So I would think as we get closer to roster compliance, we're going to have a decision on that. But as he said back then, and now it's out of our hands. So we'll just wait to hear.
What do you make of that from Chris Henderson, Steve? Are you surprised that the league hasn't come down with an answer yet? Do you think there will be something done within the next week or so before the start of the season, or do you think this could trickle into the season at this point?
Yeah, no. Look, I'm told that the club are worried that if they don't sort it out sooner rather than later, it could disrupt their plans for the start of the season, and it will do if it goes into next week and then they're unsure. So look, like I said, I also spoke to someone at the league earlier in the week, and they said they were still chasing them up. So that was a little bit unclear. They never came back to me. So it's just to kind of wait and see. But the club, they want it sorted out now, so then they can move on and do whatever they have to do.
Do you expect Blaise Matuidi to be on the roster this season?
I would have thought so. And they've invested a lot of money in him, haven't they? And he's a good player, and he's a key part of the squad. I mean,
what about Mattias Pellegrini?
Well, it seems that maybe that Pellegrini's going to have to maybe move on. You know, why? You maybe know better than me, but in terms of him having to take a pay cut, or why would he want to sort of take less money and stay, or whatever than that? Maybe I'm not sure. These are all questions that need to be answered.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say that Matuidi will be on the team. I do think that if there is a punishment from MLS, and I'm reiterating what I've said in shows past, I think it'll be more on the financial side as well as maybe transfer window or player acquisition side. I don't think it'll be a strike against Blaise Matuidi. That's just what I think. And I do think that Mattias Pellegrini may have to be loaned out. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. Now,
yeah, I can understand why they want some answers and some clarification on what actually happened. I think that's fair enough.
Sure, I mean, it's been a while now, and at one point Phil Neville said 5 to 7 days, and that came and went. That was a month ago. Still not sure what led him to believe that was a possibility, but again, we also don't know where MLS stands in its investigation because they have chosen to not comment until the investigation is over, which may or may not be fair to Inter Miami. Just depends on your viewpoint on the thing, if Inter Miami maybe did break a rule. Let's continue on to the arrivals in preseason camp. Like you reported last week for The Sun, the whole squad is now in South Florida, obviously minus Kieran Gibbs, who will not join until the summer. That's a good bit of news for Inter Miami because they need to get as many reps and as many practices in as possible with the full group. Now, there might be another addition coming to the team. Not sure if it'll be in the summer or fairly soon, but there was a report out of the Dutch media that Feyenoord goalkeeper Nick Marsman is on Inter Miami's transfer list and that they're trying to close a move for him. This is not the first time Inter Miami has reportedly been after a goalkeeper, but Chris Henderson did confirm that is the case. Let's have a listen at what he said on Tuesday.
Yeah, we've been in discussions with some goalkeepers. We're happy with John and Drake and Dylan. I think the competition is good there. But as we look at every position on the field, we always talk about wanting to make competition at every position. And that's not only going to make us better in games, that's going to make us better in training every day, just to raise the level. And goalkeeper's another position where we want to have competition.
Steve, 2 questions for you here. Obviously, we don't know much of Nick Marsman. I can say that he's started and played 19 games for Feyenoord this season in the Eredivisie, the Netherlands' top tier league. But what do you think about their willingness to admit that they're after a goalkeeper, and how do you think that affects number one John McCarthy going into next weekend's first game?
Yeah, I mean, well, they've been after a goalkeeper, I think, for a while. Certainly, I think that was one of Phil Neville's first sort of targets, was to look for obviously Luis Robles retired, didn't he? So they needed a bit of backup. So they've been looking at a keeper. I don't really know too much about him. Texted a Dutch agent I know, said he was a very interesting player. But yeah, I mean, he has experience playing in the Dutch league, which is a good standard, Feyenoord, big team. Former title winners in Holland, crazy support. But yeah, I mean, it's clearly got experience playing at a very high level. So be interested to see what happens. But it doesn't seem like anything is signed and sealed just yet.
Well, the thing about him is that while he's starting for Feyenoord this season, this is the first campaign that he's been a regular starter at the club level since 2016-2017 when he was a starter for FC Twente. So he hasn't been playing regularly up until this season. Now, is Inter Miami, swooping in at the right time and maybe getting him at the right moment? He's 30 years old. He'll be 31 later this year. Obviously, maybe has a bit more pedigree than John McCarthy, who was playing in the USL a little bit over a year ago. But how do you think that affects John McCarthy going into next week's home opener and into the season, knowing that, hey, I'm going to be the number one right now, but maybe not for long? How does that weigh on a player?
Competition for places. Look at Man United right now. They've got David De Gea and they've also got Dean Henderson. I think Solskjaer came out the other day. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, the coach, said we've got two number ones. Just fighting for each other, fighting for each other's place, and that's it. Sort of the competition can sometimes work out well, and you have two guys really sort of busting a gut to impress to get that spot on the team. So no, I think the coaching staff would encourage definitely strong competition, especially when it comes to keepers.
Of course, I agree that competition is good for the team. I'm not saying they shouldn't have competition. I'm just asking you how you think John McCarthy takes that news. He's been training the whole preseason thinking he's going to be the number one.
It's the goalkeeper's life, man. That's it. That you live life on the edge. Any time. It's only one position. You only get one chance. So that's just the way it is, isn't it? To get someone else in.
But he's going to go into the first game, maybe with that in his head. And now I don't know if is he going to play like he has to impress. Is he going to play as freely as he wants to, or as he would if he didn't know that another goalkeeper was probably coming on board to take his position? Because if they're going to go to Europe and sign a goalkeeper, it's not to make that goalkeeper the number two. I mean, that's just my opinion. I think if they're going to go get Nick Marsman, they're putting him as a starter. And the only way he doesn't start is if he has a complete, has terrible form from the start and just doesn't fit into the group and doesn't perform at MLS. Other than that, I don't see how John McCarthy stays as the number one with Nick Marsman being signed from a Dutch club, first division club.
He's out of contract in the summer. Looking for a deal. The agent's probably putting his name around. He's gonna probably jump at the chance to have a go in the US.
He will, but we're talking about John McCarthy. John McCarthy is now essentially being demoted.
What's Phil Neville supposed to do? Not sign someone else? What do you want to do?
I'm not asking whether that's what Phil Neville should do. I'm asking, how do you think John McCarthy takes this news as a professional player going into what he thought was going to be maybe his season to be the number one, and now I think that can weigh on him. I think that can affect and impact the way he plays. There's the mental side and the emotional side. It's not something you can measure from afar or even when you're watching on TV or in the press box, but that definitely has an impact on how soccer and football players perform. 100%.
It's up to him, mate. Maybe he'll come in the first few games and absolutely play out of this world. It'll be undroppable. That's the challenge, isn't it? That's
possible. It's possible, but I definitely think that
John McCarthy needs to believe it.
I think it's going to be quite a challenge, especially since they're going to Europe to bring this goalkeeper. Steve, let's take a quick break. We'll come back after that to talk about a few more things, including a player with a very familiar and big name that's on trial with Inter Miami.
Teams throughout the league are going through the same thing we are. Canceled games, trying to keep everyone safe. It's obviously challenging for us to prepare for a season this way. You can't just, schedule the games you want and everything's going to work the way you want. So, we've tried to make the best of this situation.
Primo, we've talked about certain positions. We've talked about certain players. One player that popped up in the news last week after we recorded was Enzo Sidan. Yes, that is the legendary Zinedine Zidane's son, one of them. And he has been on trial with Inter Miami for several weeks. Now, whether he gets signed or not is uncertain, although I think you have heard some news in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, he's on trial. I think he's done okay. This is what we were told. But I've never really haven't seen him play too much, so we'll have to wait and see. I mean, obviously, he's comes from such a great, storied family. His father was arguably one of the greatest players of all time. If you ever want to watch a film about soccer, that's a good film. There's a Zidane film. I think it's just called Zidane. And it's on a camera which basically just follows him and him alone for 90 minutes in this game. I think he's playing Valencia. Well, he's playing for Real Madrid. It's just incredible, and the game is really dramatic. But anyway, I'm going off point here. I've never really seen Enzo play too much, but I mean, it's an interesting one to see what happens.
He hasn't played all that much in the past few years. He played last year at Almeria, before that at Aves, and he's kind of bounced around since leaving Real Madrid's second and third teams, half a decade ago. So, not sure what kind of impact he can make in Major League Soccer or that Inter Miami could get. I guess we'll wait and see if he gets signed. It was notable, though, that they have a Zidane on trial and that he's been in practice even when the team opened training sessions to us on the media side. Now, they have practiced at the far fields for most of the time that we have been there, so harder to pick him out and pinpoint who the new face is, but he's been around for a few weeks, so that doesn't speak well on our behalf that we did not do as good of a job there as we should have.
Remember, his dad's obviously good friends with David Beckham. They played it together in Real Madrid, Roberto Carlos and Figo. And such an amazing team. Brazilian Ronaldo. Yeah, so it's a good story.
Well, for anyone that wants to know, he's a 26-year-old attacking midfielder, but he can play in a few different spots, but he only made three appearances for Almeria in league play last year. Now, Steve, let's move on to the fact that tickets went on sale for the first 3 games this past week. And what I've heard by and large from several fans is that the process was terrible and very frustrating and very difficult to secure tickets. I was told that Inter Miami opening up this last friendly on Sunday against Toronto FC is due in part to that process because it was just so rough and just not a very pleasant experience for Inter Miami fans.
Well, that's not good to hear. That's obviously the first time I've heard of that. So, what were the reasonings?
Just the system itself, just overall how people could get into, I guess, the stadium seat selection and pick seats, and heard there were seats that showed that they were available but then weren't available and they couldn't pick, and they were also timed in how quickly they could buy the seats for the first 3 games, and that kind of added some extra stress and chaos. So it was just kind of not a pleasant experience for fans. Hopefully Inter Miami sorts that out going forward, which I expect that they will, because again, starting May 29th, their plans are to have as close to full capacity as possible. Obviously, these 3 games that are being sold to fans, or the tickets are being sold to fans, it's with limited capacity, so certain rules and regulations apply there, and Inter Miami has to work around those. So not ideal circumstances by and large, but Inter Miami probably should have done a little bit better there. Speaking of games, and we touched on this earlier, but I guess we didn't really hone in on it, is Inter Miami earlier this week on Monday announced that it was going to play 3 friendlies this week. One was again tonight against Miami FC, tonight Wednesday. The next one will be on Sunday against Miami FC, and then they're playing also on Sunday a second game against Toronto FC. So there's some games on the agenda after looking like they might not have another friendly on the cards. Good bit of news for Inter Miami.
Yeah, exactly. They just needed some games. It must be so frustrating to go to Sarasota. It's a bit of a journey, isn't it? Drag everyone up there, and then to not play at all was it's just not ideal. I know they played in Tampa the weekend before that, but yeah, that was just very, very frustrating because that was a whole training week block basically just ruined because of the pandemic and the virus and everything else that goes with that. So yeah, at least now they can have a sort of good few run outs before and the season's come around really quickly, hasn't it? It starts sort of week Sunday.
And Henderson did confirm this week that there were players in Inter Miami squad as well as that of other teams in Bradenton and Sarasota that had COVID, and obviously that was the reason why they decided to come back. They felt like they were safer in more of a bubble here in South Florida. However, must be added that Inter Miami on Monday announced that the players received their first vaccine shots, so they are planning to receive their second one in the next few weeks. I'm not exactly entirely sure what that entails in the bigger picture for Inter Miami and whether that means maybe, if we get vaccinated, we're able to speak to them up close and personal in the near future. I'm not sure what it all entails, but certainly a good bit of news for the South Florida team.
Yeah, I mean the protocols are still it changes week by week, doesn't it, in terms of what's allowed and what's not, and it's all governed by MLS basically. They make the rules for interaction between players and media and whatever. So hopefully as things begin to ease and more people get vaccinated or whatever and the rates drop more, then we'll be back sort of reporting normally rather than sort of from afar looking into a computer screen. But yeah, it just depends. I mean, the cases was kind of on the up a little bit in Florida recently, so we'll just have to wait and see.
Now, one other topic, Steve, that I think we should talk about is something that I heard from Paul Dalglish, Miami FC's head coach, when I spoke to him earlier this week. And it was about the now existent relationship between Inter Miami and Miami FC, something that did not exist last year.
Last year, for whatever reason, the phone calls weren't returned, and this year, we've now got the relationship that two teams should have in the area.
Steve, what are your quick thoughts on there now being somewhat of a relationship between the two South Florida teams?
No, it's good. I think it's a positive thing. I've done a fair bit with Miami FC in the past, and they've been fighting hard. They've been around for 5 or 6 years. Maybe Alessandro Nesta took over initially, and then they started up. Then they sort of went away for a bit, and there was the problems with the USL. Then they came back again. And it's an interesting story. So I want to see them do well. I want to see them flourish and have sort of two good, sort of solid, established teams here. That can just sort of bounce off each other. The owner of Miami FC has been critical of MLS. He wants promotion and relegation. He's had legal battles with MLS and US soccer as well, trying to put their point of view across that it's MLS is a closed shop and it doesn't help sporting advancement, and they want to have a fair playing field and have promotion and relegation and give teams like Miami FC a chance of mixing it with everyone else, but. US, it doesn't work like that, unfortunately, and they've been banging their heads against a brick wall for a long time. But they're a nicely run club. Paul Dalglish, again, you talk about Zidane's storied sort of family in life, and Paul Dalglish's dad Kenny, Liverpool legend, Celtic legend, Scotland legend, just a complete legend of British football. And Paul Dalglish, who played in MLS and also played for Newcastle and Norwich and a few other teams. He's giving it a go as a coach, so it's I think it's a good thing.
It's definitely a good thing, especially if it helps Inter Miami in these preseason games, and if the two teams can work with one another on occasion to help grow the sport in this area. There's no mistakes made about Inter Miami being the much sexier team and the bigger brand in this South Florida market, but I think it's definitely a plus that they can now coincide and try to work with each other to help one another in certain situations or in certain scenarios. So definitely a plus. Very interesting for Paul Dalglish to say that last year the phone wasn't being picked up, but now there is. Probably has to do at least a little bit with his relationship with Phil Neville. But moving on.
Yeah, 100%. 100%, yeah.
Steve, I have one more thing I want to talk to you about before we jump into our Q&A session. And I know it's not your favorite talking point in the whole wide world, but there was a goalkeeper jersey that was revealed, or maybe not officially revealed, but that was shown by the team. The images surfaced online as well. And it's predominantly pink. It's got like I don't know how to describe it, but like a weird design across the body of the jersey. It's a shade of pink, a different shade of pink, maybe a darker shade of pink. But it has purple on it, which is Inter Miami's rival Orlando City's color. Now, I know Adidas makes these jerseys kind of stock for the year, and all different teams, or all the teams, wear them at different times, but I don't know. What are your thoughts on Inter Miami wearing purple, their rival's color, on a jersey? Because I don't know. I forget what team you support in England, but I can't imagine that they would ever wear the opposing rivals' main color.
Well, yeah. I followed West Ham, as a kid back home. I mean, I guess Chelsea would be the rivals, and Millwall both playing blue. Would West Ham play in blue? I don't think they would use that as a reason. Maybe they would use it as a reason for not playing in blue. I'm not sure, really. Does it make a difference? I don't think so. Not really. Do you? Well, you clearly do. So.
I think you shouldn't wear your rival's colors, be it a goalkeeper or a field player. That's just my personal opinion.
Cool shirt.
Oh no, I think the jersey overall is great. I mean, again, I know it's probably an Adidas call and not necessarily an Inter Miami call, because it's just the way the deal with Adidas and Major League Soccer works. But I guess that's just fodder for the podcast. Steve, let's take another quick break. We'll come back for our Q&A session and our final thoughts after this. Steve, it's Q&A time. However, before we get to that, just got a bit of breaking news. Multiple sources have told me that Inter Miami won its preseason game tonight by a 1-0 score. Gonzalo Higuain with the game-winning goal. So Inter Miami picks up its first preseason victory in its second preseason match. There's a bit of information for the Miami Total Futbol listeners who were anxiously or eagerly looking to find out the result, because Inter Miami has made it a big old secret.
Phil Neville's first win. Let's celebrate it.
True that. You can celebrate it, but true that it is his first win. Okay, Q&A time. Well, we only have a few questions this week, so let's try to go through them fairly quickly. The first one comes from Lloyd Hellebrun. If they cut Pellegrini because of the DP issue, would anyone actually notice? Oof. Harsh question from Lloyd. Steve, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think the squad would notice. I mean, he's still, he did okay last season. Didn't rip up any trees, but he did okay. And in a squad that hasn't got a load of sort of attacking talent or creative talent, I think to lose him, would hurt them, because unless they replace him, that's the thing. If they get rid of him when he leaves, can they replace him? Which I'm sure they'll look to do. Because that's where they kind of lacked it, didn't they? If it wasn't working, how could Diego Alonso try and change it off the bench? It was difficult. Got Gonzalo's brother there, who could do a job, but a younger guy as well to come in if Pellegrini goes would be good.
So they can certainly replace him in terms of the roster slot if they do part ways with him, and that means for more than just a loan. But can they sign a DP, a young DP? Obviously not. Now, maybe they could sign someone under the under-22 initiative, sure. But if we're going to answer Lloyd Helbrun's question, would anyone actually notice? I mean, from a fan standpoint, from the outside, maybe not, because his performances weren't great last year. However, he has potential. Now it's about finding the best way to make use of it and getting the most out of him. And maybe Phil Neville is that guy, because a lot has been said about his ability to work with younger players, and maybe he could get the best out of Pellegrini, or more out of him than we saw in 2020. Now, the next question comes from Brandt, and it's a similar question. Hey, Franco, love the pod. Left mid seems to have a lot of young talent. Pellegrini, Ascona, Penn, and Robbie possibly. You think we'll see one of them break out? Ascona, a serious contender from what you've seen from Dominican Republic, Fort Lauderdale, CF games. Is this a do or die season for Pellegrini? Is Enzo Sidan an option? So I'll start here. There is talent on the wings. I don't think Josh Penn is necessarily an option there. I think he's more of a right wing player, however he might be. But will someone break out? I mean, I think we'll see someone impress. I think there's enough options there that someone's going to come in, get some minutes, and do well with those minutes. But as to who it'll be, tough to say. I don't know if it'll be Ascona. I mean, I would probably wager that it's not Ascona just because he's young and I don't see him getting that much playing time. I think his game still, while he's good with the ball, I don't know if defensively he has enough yet to earn serious minutes in Major League Soccer. That's just my opinion. Maybe Robbie Robinson, maybe. There's been a lot of talk about him lately and how Inter Miami chose him over Daryl Dike, who is killing it in England's second division right now. He's on a red-hot scoring tear, but I mean, that's just what I think. I do think someone will step up. I'm just not sure who it is and don't think it'll be Ascona.
Yeah, my friend's a big Barnsley fan, actually. He loves him, Daryl Dike. Yeah, I mean, that's what you want, though, isn't it? You want to just have a player, discover a player, a young player like that just really comes of age and starts doing really well. And that's the challenge, isn't it, for the managers to try and work the youth system and just get some other players just coming through to save the club a few dollars and just keep that production line coming. That's what Beckham they've been talking about, producing a culture with the academy and bringing all the players through. That's the dream. But in reality, it does take a bit of time to for people to come to the fore.
I'll add this because if Pellegrini stays, if they find a way to make it work, I think it is a big season for him because he has to raise his level of his performance. He has to raise that level, absolutely. Maybe get a couple more goals and a few more assists and just play better. Because if he does not, then Inter Miami could be willing to move on and part ways with him because he was brought under the previous regime, not under this current regime. Next question comes from J.R. Reed. Steve, you can start here. Hey, gents, any news on the players who had COVID? Will they participate in next week's preseason game? Henderson said he's done with signing players until the winter window. Do you think Inter Miami are better with the new signings or still missing a couple pieces? Thanks.
We don't know how many players were affected with the virus. I'm led to believe it was around sort of 4 people from Inter Miami. But as Chris Henderson said, it was a member of staff. I'm unsure of the player. But it affected the squad, and as for signings, I think again we mentioned it a lot. Depends on what happens with Tweedy, with Pellegrini. They're trying to move a few pieces here and there to see what they can work out. So it's all a little bit unclear right now.
I don't think they're done. I think he said they're planning ahead, but I don't think they're done.
No, I don't think so. No,
the goalkeeper the goalkeeper position continuously comes up in reports from abroad, and I think
the goalkeeper thing is going to be sorted. I would have thought. So I think they'll get him in. They've got the defenders in now. Just maybe a couple of players or a player a bit further on the field, a midfielder, an attacking position, or a striker. I think that's where they'll be looking at a left winger, isn't it, potentially?
I do think that just to add to that, the goalkeeper position, where there's smoke, there's fire, and we've heard a lot of news and reports about the goalkeepers around different leagues being looked at by Inter Miami, whether it was, I'm blanking on his name right now, but the goalkeeper that played at Everton or that plays at Everton, the backup goalkeeper, or Nick Marsman now. At one point there was even talk about a Panamanian goalkeeper that plays in Uruguay. So I think where there's smoke, there's fire. I think they will sign one more player. Now, whether they'll have to cut someone or move someone from their squad in order to make room for that signing and any other signings potentially in the summer, well, that's definitely a possibility. It's something Chris Henderson mentioned this week. Now, the last question comes from Carlos Segovia, and he says, I probably posted this too late, but he did not because we recorded a day late. But this is his question. Based on team and early prediction, which position in the league do you think the team will land in this season? Steve, do you want to answer that now, or do you want to wait for next week when we're in the final week of preseason, looking ahead to the start of the regular season? Do you want to hold your thoughts there, or do you just want to go gung-ho and have a response ready right now?
Yeah, I mean, look, I just, they've barely played, have they? I just, literally, 2 games going into the weekend. So, it's... The preseason has really been mucked up because you think, normally, I know the dates have changed and stuff because of the pandemic, and everything's been sort of pushed forward. But you know, you would expect pre-season to at least be 4 or 5 weeks. I know they've been training, but they haven't been playing, and so it's, I don't know. Yeah, but definitely reserve judgment until they've played a few more games for sure. It's scary to think that the season begins next week. It's come along so quickly.
See, you just completely hedged your bets there and didn't say anything of substance there, Steve Brenner. Because the question was, where do you think they'll land in the season? So whether it's this week or next week, you know, they're going to have only played a certain amount of games, and we're going to have to come up with some prediction. It's the preseason pod. We have to come up with a prediction. So you better marinate on that one, because next week I'm holding you to the fire, and we're going to get a response out of you.
I sleep on the fence.
Well, that does it for our Q&A session this week. Steve, final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, just the feeling that they want to get this Mccarthy thing sorted was prevailing for me this week for sure. You know, I think it's kind of putting a little bit of a spanner in the works, and you know, a little bit of a distraction when all other stuff as well as hasn't been going to plan. But now hopefully they've got a game under their belt tonight, and then a couple more games over the weekend. I think next week, in the build up to that first game, they're going to be in not too bad a shape, all things considered, which is decent.
For me, my final thought is, I did a piece on Nicolas Figal that came out today, Wednesday. I was able to speak to him in an interview in Spanish a couple of weeks back, and we touched on a number of different things, and he said he wants to get at his best level because he made no qualms and did not hide from the fact that he did not perform up to par in 2020. And he wants to play to the best of his abilities this season. He said he's come in with a renewed sense and a renewed vision for the year. He had a lot of personal matters that he said affected him during the expansion season. So it's an insightful piece. It was a good interview. So if you want to check it out, it's on sbisoccer.com. And again, it's on Nicolas Figal and how he's heading into this new season, which I think we will see him play a lot of center back and right back. Phil Neville has said he considers him an option at both spots. Again, that's also in the piece and touched on in the piece. So give it a read. Let me know what you think on @Franco Panizo. But that does it for this week's show. We will be back next week to talk about the first preseason game we're going to be able to watch on Sunday versus Toronto FC. And we'll talk all our preseason predictions for Inter Miami, from how they'll finish in the regular season to the playoffs, if they make it there, to who we think will be the top goal scorer and who may be the biggest disappointment. But for Steve Brenner, I am Franco Panizo. We will talk to you guys again next week.